If you're ready to experience more peace and joy in your life, if you want to feel more comfortable in your own skin, and if you're ready to discover and expand on your energetic gifts and personal power, you're in the right place. So here's your host, Kelle Sparta.
Welcome back to Spirit Guides. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman and spiritual business coach. And this is Ascend Fridays, where we prove that the magic is real by doing readings and healings and all sorts of energy stuff. It's guided meditations, whatever, right? So today, I was lucky enough to be on Dylan Watkins' podcast, Heroes of Reality, right?
Yep.
Yes. So Dylan was kind enough to interview me on his podcast earlier this week. And I was like, hey, do you want to do one of these sessions with me? And he's like, yeah, I do. So welcome to the show, Dylan. You want to tell people a little bit about yourself and your podcast?
Yeah, 100%. Kelle, thank you so much for having me here. Super excited to be here with you. I run a podcast called Heroes of Reality based on Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey Mythology, interviewing 1,000 modern day heroes in life, technology, and science. And I came across you, and you seemed like a super interesting Kit Kat with your background in being a spiritual guiding shaman. And it was a really fascinating experience to have you on the show. And so when you offered for me to be on your show, I was just like, yeah, that sounds like a grand old time.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have a grand old time. So when we spoke earlier this week, I had suggested maybe the business energy review. And then when we got on the call this morning, because I told you to think about what you might want. When we got on the call this morning, you were like, well, what kind of things might somebody want? And I was like, that's a really good question. So, I had suggested that, for a business is specifically the question. And so I was like, well, if you're acquiring another business, or if you're thinking about selling your business, or if you're starting a whole new division of your business, or hiring on new staff or anything like that, right? Any big changes in your business. And then I said, well, but one of the things I work with my clients with a lot is I know I need to do this, but I can't get myself to do it, right? And you were like, that one. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and you said it was around marketing, right? So why don't you tell me a little bit about how that works for you?
Yeah, 100%. So I do the podcast for fun. That is just something that is just a deep passion of mine. What I do for work is I build AI automation systems for businesses. And a lot of the marketing that I do is I go and I think of interesting, fun ideas of automations, whether it's like, a chatbot for a website or an AI that go in, reads your emails and sends, lead nurturing campaigns. And then I go and I demonstrate that. And I've been able to grow my TikTok to like 55,000 and my YouTube in like 60 days to like 2,000 subscribers. And the thing was, it was working. I just stopped. And so I have an issue where when I make the content, it's good. But then something happens where I just kind of get this block and I stop. And I know it would work if I just did it, but I'm not doing it. And so I'm just trying to figure out what to do next.
Okay. So tell me what happens when you stop. Are you bored? Are you overdone and burned out? Are you seeing success and then going and just stopping, or
Sure.
what? Yeah.
I think what happens is there's these different energies that I get into. And so there's a part of me like with like these challenges, like I was doing like a 30-day AI agent challenge on YouTube and I was making content every single day. And then I get towards the end and I kind of get burnt out. But then there's kind of a thing that happens that like my focus will shift to something slightly different. And then I'll create a gap of not doing the work. And then I'll start to downshift into a kind of a spiral of, oh, if I missed 1 day, 2 days, 2 days, 5 days, 5 days, 10 days. And then getting started is so much harder than again to get back into the pattern of producing that stuff. And then I noticed that a lot of my high vibration activities tend to go away. So instead of cold plunging and working out, it's social media and fast food, right? And so there's this thing that happens, and it's just hard to maintain that level of vibration for
Yeah.
that consistent amount of time.
Okay. And so is it usually when you have a long stretch of stuff that you do that you end up going into this state?
It's usually when all of a sudden I'll give myself an excuse or reason to stop for a thing. Like I got invited to be a member of the press for this local thing called it's a technology conference down the street from my house. And so I took that time to go to the conference instead of make content. And when I did that, I kind of broke the pattern of
Mm.
making content every day. But I was invited as press to go to this thing and they want me to take a look at all this cool stuff and it's super important. And then the pattern breaks, and then just getting started again, I noticed it's like I focus on the activity, and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm like, oh, shiny object. And I'll slide off to something more simple, like social media or whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is that this feels like an inner child pattern, and that you're being very disciplined, and that your inner child is going, but fun, but chill, right? So I had a client a couple years ago, and we were talking, and he was having this pattern, and I said, well, what is it that you're excited about? What are you doing for fun? What would make you excited? He's like, oh, I really want the new iMac, but I can't justify the expense. It'd be really cool and fun, but I can't justify the expense. I said, do you have the money? He said, yeah. I said, buy it. And he's like, what? I said, your inner child is crying out for fun and for something exciting, and it's blocking your business. The $3,000 for the iMac is going to be more than worth it to make up for the fact that you're blocking your business, which is, you're losing out on money every single day. And he went and bought the iMac, and it was on back order. And so he bought it, and he made $7,000 the next day, right? He made the money back the next day, right? And then it was on back order for a while. And so he got frustrated and canceled it. And then his business stopped again. And I said, why did you do that? It was on order. Now you're gonna have to wait again. He's like, but I just got. I'm like, order it again right now. And he went and he made more money again. Okay, so this is what happens when you don't listen to your inner child. And
Mm.
so your inner child is all about, it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you're working out and cold plunge and this activity and all of that is very disciplined, and
It's
that
disciplined, yeah.
when you get into the discipline, you can continue the discipline, but you resist like mad going into the discipline.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what that sounds like is that your inner adult is going to the inner child and saying, nope, no play. We're doing this work. Right.
Yes.
Would you say that's fair? Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So the inner child will then rebel and be
Mm.
like, ooh, bright, shiny thing that makes me feel good. That's going to be fun and interesting. Let's go be press. That sounds like fun. I want to play that. I want to play it being press, right? And
Mm.
then it'll be like, oh, social media sounds like fun. And oh, let's go to McDonald's. Yeah. Right. It's your inner child is just like, right, because you don't let him out of the closet there very often. And so he's going to run wild while he can, right? So, the key for this particular thing would be to balance your inner child with your discipline, right?
Mm.
And so to not have it be one or the other, because this is the seesaw that you're on right now, right? And so the key is to create balance in every day, to give your inner child some space to play, right? And so, this is about coming into relationship with your inner child and knowing what he wants, right?
Yes, and so one of the things that I'm gonna stream of consciousness as it comes back, right? So one thing that happens with this, I struggle with balance with inner child. So
Mm,
what, for example, I have like a incredible impulse monkey. So like when I'm on, I'm incredibly on, and it's intense. But if I give an inch to my inner child, it will take a mile. And so the challenge I struggle with is if I open up the Pandora's box of social media, like, oh, I'm just gonna give myself 10 minutes at night, it very quickly slips into 10 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hours, 8 hours. And so generally speaking, it's very difficult for me to stay in that center lane of
right.
balance versus all on one or all on the other. So what thoughts around that one?
Yeah. So I think social media is not the thing you give your inner child.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
going to
that's
start
fair.
with that, because that is very easy for anybody to lose time to, right?
Oh man.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I would say give your inner child something else, right?
Okay.
So finger paints or, something fun out, like go out for a nice meal, not McDonald's, right? Something fun and yummy that's not
Mm,
crap, right? Something that is a balance between, you wanting to stay fit and your inner child wanting something nummy,
nummy.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
You're right.
so, yeah. And so it's about finding that space, and it's about, if your inner child is bored with your workout, okay, change up your workout. Do something different. Go swimming. Go to a water park, right?
Mm,
Go
mhm.
to a water park. That would engage your inner child and be a workout, climbing up all those stairs to go down the slides, right? So, that sort of combination thing, right?
Yeah.
Finding small things every day to ways to be silly. Are you married?
Yeah, I'm married. Yeah.
Okay. Is your wife silly at all? I'm
She can
assuming
be.
wife.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, be silly with her, right? My husband and I, it's our anniversary today, right? It's our ninth
Oh.
anniversary today. And he and I were sitting this morning having our coffee, and he's like, happy anniversary, baby. And I'm like, happy anniversary. And he goes, happy anniversary. Happy. And we're singing together, happy anniversary, happy anniversary. Right. We're just being our little 4-year-old selves laughing and
Yeah.
giggling. Right. So there are ways to let your inner child out that don't derail your life. Right. So, my inner child's out a lot with my husband because he's super silly. Right.
Mhm.
And so the two of us are 4-year-olds together, like just having a good time in general.
I think I'm more of the silly one. Uh,
Okay.
but
You have a silly friend?
she's oh yeah, yeah. She's a CPA grounded, very salt of the earth kind of thing. And I'm the wacky entertainment that comes along to knock her off her rocker. Uh,
Yeah.
but I like the
My best friend is a CPA too, but she's also hysterical. So that
oh, that's
helps.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. So
So,
I like the idea of what's actually helpful with this is that giving my inner child something, but just not social media. And I consider social media to almost be like the modern day forest. And there's great bounty. I've gotten amazing clients and friendships and connections and so many good things from social media. But there's also monsters that will eat your time and your attention and your mental health if you spend too much time in it. And so I think if I frame it in my mind of like, look, this is not for the inner child for entertainment. This is for the adult Dylan for doing the worky stuff that he needs to do. The
yes.
other entertainment things you can do. Here's your smorgasbord of what you're allowed to do, right? In terms of activities. And there's a plenty of things like I have a guitar and there's various other activities that I can do, but just be like, okay, cool. You want to have a good time? Choose from this menu, choose from the kids menu of entertainment.
Yes.
So I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also, the other thing that happens when we're entrepreneurs is we have a tendency to get like tunnel vision focus on our business, and all of our energy goes into that. And, to a certain extent, we need to do that to make the business go, especially in the beginning. But after that, you need to have I have my clients create a things to do, things I want to be, do, and have list, right? And you make a list of 100 things you want to be, do, and have. And that combination of things, when you should be taking time off, but you'll end up either going into the social media scroll for your inner child, or you'll go into working because you don't know what you're going to do, right? Because you don't have anything on your list to do. So therefore, you end up doing one or the other, neither of which are good for your mental health, right?
Mm.
So when you have a list of things you want to be, do, and have, then, oh, I want to go on this vacation in 3 months. Let me go do some research on that vacation. Wouldn't that be fun to imagine all the things that we could do? Maybe I want to sign up for this tour or that tour or the other tour, right? Oh, I want to learn how to play piano like Billy Joel. Let me go sit down and practice at the piano for a while. I want to meet one of my heroes, right? Let me figure out how I can do that, right? Any number of things that you may want to do. I want to be a triathlon runner, or whatever,
So is
competitor.
it so is that list is the be do have list something that I'm meant to review as a reframe to say this is why I should put more work into the business, or is it a reframe around I'm I'm feeling squirmy and I'd like to be entertained. So I'm going to look at one of these things and be able to focus my ADD, ADHD energy towards one of these activities
Yeah,
while I'm
the
kind of
latter.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it does the former automatically, but you're pretty motivated to get your business to go anyway. So, there's that. I feel like I'm losing you here.
Losing me?
Who's texting you?
Oh no, 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 no. Oh, I just have notes off the side. I'm not
Oh, okay. That's fine.
all I put was the be do have live ADHD. That's all I
Yes,
put.
yes. Okay. So the upshot is that the be do have list is when you have a tendency to overwork because
Mm,
because it's time for downtime and you go to take your downtime and you don't know what to do on your downtime and
mm,
you don't want to scroll social media because you know what happens there, then you're like, I don't know what else to do. That's what the be do have list is for. Right. So you
mm,
don't end up working and you don't end up scrolling social media. You have yourself a list of things that you can do. Here's a creative project I'm working on. Here's this, here's that. My creative projects are not meant to be finished. My creative projects are meant to be engaging, right? And if
mm.
they get finished, it's a bonus, right? My mother never understood this because she bought the materials and was like, "Where's the outcome?" I'm like, "No, it's the activity."
It's just the doing part.
It's the doing part, right? It's like something to keep my hands busy, right?
Yeah.
And so, this is one of those sorts of things that is like, okay, I want to see this movie, I want to do that thing. And so if you keep the list open, then every time you think, "Oh, God, that'd be really cool," you just add it to your list, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
then when you don't know what to do, you go to your list.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And your list gives you a whole host of things that you could do. And you go, okay, well, I can't learn how to play piano like Billy Joel today, but I could practice the piano for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's something that you can make incremental progress towards, but at least then you're not wasting your life in front of the television or
Sure.
working because you got nothing else to do or whatever, right?
Yeah, I did notice this. So like I have a guitar coach and he recorded an awesome video for me because I really want to learn Stand By Me for various reasons. It's actually one of the songs that when I was on plant medicine, I proposed to my wife on plant medicine and then projectile vomited all over her.
Oh my God.
So uh,
And she
uh,
still said yes.
she
That's
still said
love.
yes, still said yes. And so it's a really meaningful song to me. But was actually really good. I saw this thing where like I was kind of like in a little bit of a rabbit hole, and then I saw this person playing the guitar on thing, and I was like, oh, so I started playing my guitar. I played my guitar a bit around that song, and then I actually started to make some content, and I was actually able to make some really cool content around it. And so it was kind of this interesting of seeing creativity, then doing this creative thing as a
Mhm.
productive activity, and then it kind of
Yes.
shifted over to the social media or like producing content on social
Yeah.
media. So I saw that as an interesting pattern like 2, 3 days ago.
Well,
So,
your inner child is actually the caretaker of your creativity.
oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah. So if you're not giving
Yeah.
your inner child any free time, then you're not going to find a lot of creativity in your life.
Mm. Which is
So,
different than social media, which is
yes,
different.
it's different than social media. Yes. Yes. Creativity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's why I said
Creativity.
finger paints and creative
Yeah.
projects and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Creativity over consumption.
Yes.
No. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna
So,
have to remember the
the
mantra.
yeah. So the inspiration was there, but the creativity needed to be activated, right? So if we're going to look at a spiritual aspect for this, right?
Mm,
Inspiration is ruled by the muses. There are 9 muses in Greek
mm.
mythology, right? And so if you wanted to do spiritual work around your creativity, you could engage with one of the 9 muses, right?
Oh,
So, go look them up. I can't remember which ones are which. It's been a long time since I've looked them up. But
yeah.
the upshot is that you could go and engage with one of the muses and ask for inspiration, and then bring your inner child into the conversation and let your inner child run wild with the inspiration, right?
Yeah, I like that too. Because I mean, part of my, you know, when I call it marketing, I don't go, here's the 10 tips that you need for your business. So for me, like my personal fun outlet for it is thinking of creative, fun things to build and do. And then I
Yep.
go and go, I think I could do that. And then I go and build it and then show it. And then for me, I like doing that from that perspective. And so, but I think sometimes I had a little bit of a creative block of like, what should I do? And then I go, it'd be easier, social media, right? So if around the process of tapping into the muses with creativity, right? Like, so if I go and look them up, like what would be like a ritual or an offering or the process in order to commune with one of these muses?
So it would likely vary depending upon the muse, but the easiest thing is just to go into a meditative state, ask to speak with the muse of your choice, and then ask her, because they're all females, ask her what you would like, what she would like as an offering, right? And typically the act of inspiration is sufficient for the muses, but it depends. And so I'm assuming that the muse of music would want an offering of music, right? If you're going to ask for musical inspiration, then you should create the music that she is inspired and that is her offering, right? If you follow through.
Hmm.
This is one of those things, right? Muses are not to be trifled with. So it's if you're going to ask for inspiration, you need to follow through on the inspiration that you get, right? So that's the
Yeah.
offering in return is the creativity that you put into play from the inspiration that they've offered. And so much like any other deity type thing, don't piss them off by asking for help and then don't and
That's-
then doing nothing with it, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that irritates everyone, including the
Yeah.
bee, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that too, especially with like going down life's path or whatever it is like you're like, oh, what should I do? And it's like, turn left. And
Right.
then you don't turn left. And then it just gets, it's like quiet. It's like, turn left. You
Right.
like, and so it's you only get so many cracks at the thing unless you take action, you know?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought about the personification of a muse, but I'm gonna go look at that. I
Yeah.
wonder if there's one for Chat GPT or technology? The technology muse?
There are gods of technology. So
Okay.
funny story. My friend Kathy, who's the CPA that I was telling you about, is hysterical. She and I launched a business like in 2013, and we brought our nascent business, our baby business, to the gods of technology and asked for a blessing. And they took it out of our hands and turned our baby into a cyborg, to which we were horrified. But we were smiling and saying, thank you, right? But the funny part was that out of the blue, weird things started happening. People started writing into us and saying, I closed my browser and it spontaneously reopened on your website, and I've never been to your website before. I typed in something completely different on my browser and your website came up, and I've never been to your website before. All of these things started happening because we had asked for the blessing from the gods of technology and gratefully received it, and that was what was happening. And so, yes, you can go to the gods of technology, although creativity isn't really their forte, right? They're tech people, right? They're technology. And just like, I mean, AI's got creativity, but it's borrowed creativity. It's not inspired human creativity, right? So those are different
Mm,
energies. Could it work? Yeah, could work, but it'll be
mm.
different than going to a muse. So,
Got it.
given that you're working with I might go to the gods of technology, right? That could be done, right? Go to the Mid Journey, right? Go
Yeah.
to the AI of Mid Journey and ask for inspiration.
Generate an image in my mind, you know?
Yeah, you know, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But all of these are archetypes. Anything that exists for any length of time to the point where hundreds of thousands of people are engaging with it, that
Mhm.
creates the archetype on the energetic. And
Yeah.
so that archetype can be accessed
Yeah.
and worked with.
Yeah. And I wonder, I guess, I mean, going down this path, right? I think in terms of business, as I'm flowing down this, right, I can go down a path of serving clients, which I have a number of clients right now, but then there's also been a pull to do the education piece, that
Mhm.
education route, right? and there's educating people about the things that I do because there's been interest and asked for that. And so I'm very curious if we're going down this path here, if I'm producing content, should I be producing content for to continue to build my base of clients in the direction that I'm going right now? Or should I go into the direction of producing content in the terms of actually becoming more of an educator and showing people uh, kind of how to do what I do?
So, based on what you have said so far,
Hmm.
I'm going to say go get more clients. And the reason I'm going to say that is because as someone who teaches programs, I can tell you it is the same program over and over and over again, and you will get bored.
Mm,
So it's fun while you build it, but it's no longer fun when you're done, right?
yeah.
You're like, oh God, I'm saying the same thing for the 50th time, right? So I think that's how you're gonna feel about it. It's like, ugh, right? With my content, I set it up so that my students consume the content on their own, and I provide coaching calls. So I don't have to go over the same content over and over again, but I'm also not doing technical content.
Mm,
So technical content, you're gonna have to be on top of that. And you're gonna have to be doing that. And you're gonna have to recreate it all the time too, which is it's exhausting after a while.
mm.
So I would personally do the service end of it uh, until that that becomes boring for you too. But the when you're building something new for everybody, and this is what I love about my new business model that I'm launching, which is the spiritual business consulting, right? What I love about that is that I get to look at every person's business and it's all different. And I'm like, ah, this is fantastic. It feeds my entrepreneur's need for new, right? Which is
Yeah.
what will ultimately like make your life miserable in your business. Oh, I need to rebrand, and oh, I need to put a new program out. No, blah blah blah. And none of it's necessary. It's all just you're bored, right? And so this is going to allow me to have some fresh insight that will keep me from making my virtual assistants insane by saying, "Oh, we're changing this for no reason." It's because it's cool, right? So that's one of those things that you, as an entrepreneur, you need to know about yourself, right?
Oh, for
So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I definitely do it because I step in, number of clients I work with, and it's all something different. It's all a different problem to like, all right, where are we at? Where are you trying to get to? How do we
yeah,
solve this thing? What is that? And so to me, that is an exciting thing to step into, is to
right,
realize that each thing's got a unique puzzle to try to unpack from and put together.
yeah.
So yeah,
And
yeah,
I
that
love
makes
your
sense.
idea for content because it is inspiring because most people don't know how to utilize AI. They don't have the inspiration to figure out how AI could be helpful to them, right?
Hmm.
And most of them are terrified of it to begin with, especially in my industry. People in the spiritual industry are tech phobic to begin with. But, when you get into something that is bleeding edge, which AI is very bleeding edge right now, being able to wrap your head around how to utilize it is one of the hardest things. And so if you're out there going, "Ooh, I could do this," or "Ooh, I could do that," right? I remember when you could get your first basic computer, right? So I was
Hmm.
had a TI 1000 and a Commodore 64, right? And I remember sitting there in 8th grade going, what can I do with this, right? And I'm like, "Ooh, I could program the periodic table and to like give me anything," right? And I spent months programming the periodic table. Never used it once, but I spent months doing it because it was entertaining, right? And then I got bored and wandered off, right? But
Yeah,
this is the thing, right?
yeah,
So, it really engages your ADHD brain,
for sure, for
and
sure.
it provides insight to other people. It's like, "Oh, I could use it this way," or, "Oh, I could use it that way." And, so what I might do for you would be to say, you know, create a playlist called, how do I use AI in my business? Right. And then that way people go, oh, I could do that, or I could do that. Oh, they're using it for inspiration. Right. And then you invite the muses to bring them in for their inspiration. That would be another way to integrate
You invite
deity
the
into your business.
muses, you invite the muses for the people that are consuming my content for the
Yes.
inspiration. Like, could you
Yes.
could you say more about that? I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah. So the people who are looking at your content, because what you're doing
Hmm.
is giving people ideas. is you're giving them inspiration for how they might use it in their business.
Yeah.
It's a perfect thing to look at the muses and say, hey, this is really useful to help you do your thing with other people. Is you could invite them over here to get inspired, right?
Oh, got it.
Right?
So yeah, so I thought that I'm now enrolling the muses to be in my marketing front.
Yes.
Come on,
Yes.
I'm doing your work here. Come on, it's good stuff. It was no, it's
Leverage me, right?
yeah, it's so funny.
We'll
Yeah,
trade. You inspire me to make a video, and I will inspire everyone else for you on the physical plane,
I like that. Yeah. And
right?
I like doing it. And I do enjoy like with all these like hard fun activities. I do enjoy the upload and being done with
Mhm.
it. And then I get a lot of like I uploaded it and someone's like, "You're back. You're finally back. This is great." I was like, "Hey everybody. Sorry, I
Yeah.
took a little break. Wife got pregnant, took a pause." And so but I like that. And so for me, the takeaway on this that I'm getting so far is one, look up the muses so I can get a little self-educated around. Two is do some sort of ritual. I'm very big around the ritually kind of activities, but whatever would be apropos to that, muse of choice, do
Yep.
that. And then also in terms of understanding that if I'm getting squirmy, that the inner child inside of me is just seeking some sort of attention or some sort of stimuli and say, okay, cool, here's a list of 100 things, right? You can go
Yep.
play in these sandboxes, right? You
Yep.
can go and be creative over here, right? And then if you're looking to do this, you can make something, and it doesn't have to be, you know, brass tacks, business automation. I can actually make some fun things that could be somewhat entertaining and and build those things out. My mind, by the way, is like halfway thinking about what are the things that I could build. Like,
Yeah.
like just there's silly things that you could build, text me, I'm in trouble. Like you send a text message to the AI and then it calls you back and then says that you're needed so that you could get out of like a bad date or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Just silly things that don't actually really, I'm not trying to actually conclude with an actual, like, this has got to really truly serve a purpose other than the purpose of really something that I think would be seemingly entertaining and useful.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, and that's all doable, right? I mean, right now my inner child is getting quite the workout because I'm in a production of Mamma Mia
that's
and
super
I'm
fun.
music directing, right? So I'm doing both of those things, which is keeping me fully engaged, right?
Yeah.
It's not around the edges, it's all consuming, right? To the point where I've actually stopped doing a lot of the work I need to be doing, which is not good, but the show is in 2 weeks, so we'll be fine. So, but yeah, we have to give our inner child some room to play, right?
Yeah.
Especially for those of us who grew up in environments where really really didn't get a lot of inner child time. So,
Yeah.
it's one of those things. But so let me just check in here. I feel like there's something else. Give me a second. Can I come into your energy field?
Oh, yeah, totes. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
please.
hold on. Okay. You come talk to your inner child here. Oh, he's very serious. Okay. Okay. So what he's saying is that he's saying you don't really give yourself a lot of downtime. You take it in chunks. Like you'll be like, I'm here and then I'm there, right? It's like he's very serious about he's not taking good. It's not that you're how do I say this? Hold on. So how do I say this? Okay, so there's language that you have that I need to tap into. Hold on. I wish you could see how solemn he is. You ever seen a little kid be like dead serious and
Yeah.
like a little sad at the same time?
Hmm.
They're just like, my dog died or something like that sort of energy. There's this very solemn energy to it. And he's just sitting here in this, and he's just saying, he just trying to get the words right, because I know that the words that I want to say are not going to be the ones that resonate with you. I'm going to say what I want to say, and then I'm going to let whatever comes up after that come out after
Sure.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like what he's saying is you're not taking care of yourself. And it's coming from this place of deep sadness. And so it feels like it is a mental emotional caretaking, right? Not a physical caretaking. It's a mental emotional caretaking. And he says it's like you push, 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 and then you break and fall down, sort of thing. Um, and he says the break and fall down is not good for you, right? It's a
It's not.
it's not a good break and fall down. It's not a I'm working really hard and then I'm playing really hard. It's not. It's like that's if you're gonna do that pattern, then the play really hard needs to come in. He's like, but you don't. You just break and fall down, right? And then you doom scroll and you do your stuff, right? But he's sitting here being very sad because the play hard doesn't come in. And
Mm.
so, okay, so that's. Is there anything else from him? There's something else in here. I feel like we already knew that. So I'm trying to figure out what they're having me look for. Hold on. I went for what I thought I knew instead of what they're telling me. So bear with me. Okay. So there's a not good enough story that's wandering around in here. And it's like you're driving to find a way to overcome that. And that's the drive thing. And the piece that's interesting about that is that feels like it's father related. Oh no, it's Did you say earlier that your wife had a baby?
She's pregnant.
She's
She's
pregnant.
pregnant. Yeah, 5 months
Okay.
pregnant.
All right. Yeah. So that's the piece that's showing up is the father piece, you becoming a father, right? There's a piece in there around that. Is this your first child?
First child.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So there's a piece in here. It feels like your relationship with your father doesn't feel like really hard challenged, but it was challenged, right? Like there was a distance, not like it was.
There was a bit of a, mm, I would say not entirely. I mean, he was a little distant when I was younger, but overall, he was a kind hippie of a man. So it wasn't really that. If I was to find what I would point that into the right direction, it would
Mm,
be more towards my brothers because one's 8 years older and one's 10 years older than me.
okay.
And so there was a lot of uh uh just what older brothers do to younger brothers kind of things,
Yeah.
a lot of torment kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a bit more, I would say if I had anything intense when I was younger, it would be probably around that. But there is a thing around not being good enough for my son that's coming as well
Right.
because
That's the piece that I'm picking up on, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. 'Cause I
So
think yeah.
when you say a hippie of a man, does that so this is related to your business, right? That's what I'm looking at is related to your business, right? So
Sure, yeah.
when I'm looking at this and this is coming up and you say hippie of a man, I'm when you were saying when I was looking at father stuff, usually father stuff in relation to being a parent is related to being a provider because that's the
Oh,
archetype, right? And
yeah.
so is that, and you said hippie of a man, so that implies a certain, revenue sort of thing, right?
Oh,
So,
a
it,
little bit.
a little
Just
bit. Okay.
the thing is, my parents played in a band from 17 to 70, right, together.
Oh, wow.
And so
Okay.
they played in surf bands and oldies bands and all these other bands. So that's what I mean by hippie. I
Yeah.
think in terms of if I was to kind of connect the dots from A to B, is that my dad tried to start a business, had a business for a little while, and actually had to give up the business and take a day job with my mom just to be able to provide for the family, right? So he wasn't
Right.
able to actually make it, like he wasn't able to make it work as business. He just couldn't cut it. And I think
Okay.
there might be an inner fear around the fact that like the go hard in my business, and I'm doing well, but at the same time, I get in these spirals of, I would say, not healthy entertainment that causes me
Hmm.
to spiral. And then I do have that thought in the back of my mind of like, what if I can't cut it the same way my father couldn't cut it? What if I go down that path? What if I'm not able to overcome for my son, for my family, and be able to provide and be in a situation where I have to take a day job
Yeah.
because, something.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the seriousness that your inner child is referencing, right?
Mm,
He's like, I can't, I'm afraid. And that's what's the driving, right? When you drive, it's driving you away from that fear, right? Oftentimes, a fear of failure drives super success, right? Um, but there's also the other side where it feels like there's this limiting belief around fear of success. What happens if you are successful? So because you hit that wall and then you stop and you don't want to start again. Now, part of that's the inner child stuff, but it also feels like there's something in there around success. What is your biggest fear around being successful?
I think my biggest fear around being successful is um, the first thing that comes to mind is it actually goes back to some inner child stuff, but it's a lack of time freedom.
Right.
Is that if I take on a bunch of clients, which I could, like if I really wanted to, I could go out and very quickly scoop up a whole bunch of clients, but then I would just be slammed with work, and
Right.
then I wouldn't have any space. And I think there's a piece of me that wants a certain amount of space and time freedom, even though I'm
Okay.
in business. Something like that.
So then the question isn't why do I go and stop? We've already answered that. But now the question becomes how do I provide while working minimal hours? Right? And so that becomes a scaling question, which is a different question. So how do I systematize what I do, everything that I can, right? And get it and then get support staff to do the pieces that can be systemized or create your own AI agents that'll do it for you, right?
True.
Since that's your shebang, right? It's your whole thing. And how do I get it set up and make it a game? Because your inner child would love this game, right? The game is how do I do more business with less time? Your inner child is going to love this because he's going to be like, did I do it? And at the end of every week, you measure, right?
Mm,
And you're like, okay, maybe this week I'm going to work a little more so that next week I could work a little less, right? And we're like gauging and we're having a game with it, and like keep a little scoreboard that you like mark it off every day and see how many hours you worked and all the things, and see if how many months pregnant is your wife?
5.
5. Okay, so you got 4 months. So in 4 months, give yourself a game, right? In 4 months, can I get my work hours down to 20 a week?
Mm.
Right? Because the first 6 months after your baby's born, you're not going to be able to do much, right? You're going to just be like walking around like a zombie, right? But you work on how many hours a week can I get my time down to and still be making the same amount of money,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the first step is how do I reduce my workload with the same amount of business?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
I
then
mean,
you work on optimizing the increase in business, right?
yeah. Yeah. And I've definitely, like in terms of business, I've built a bunch of things that streamline processes, but because a lot of my things are uh custom solution dependent, like what's in your business? What do you need? Right?
Right.
It's not like, do you want it in blue or do you want it in green?
Right.
Right? I got to step into a business and then uncluster the cluster that is there. So,
Right.
but it doesn't mean I can't scale and onboard people. And I have,
Right.
devs
I
and
mean,
different.
that could combine the people who want to be trained, right? You could train them to work in your business.
Mm, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
mm,
yeah,
right.
yeah. There, yeah, and I think that I think looking at it from, at least for myself, what's coming up for me is on a couple of these different perspectives, right? If I say, hey, like, you want to play a game? By the way, when you said game perked up, so a little background on
Mhm.
me is like, one of the previous companies, I used to run a virtual reality game studio. So I built video games and also I used those games in terms of being better and self-improvement. So I built gamification for social good and all that jazz. So I definitely like turning things into games and making it whatever it is, cooperation, competition, insert thing. And so I love the idea of having it like a game. And I also like the idea of looking at it and going, hey, look, let's start to build some of these fun things that if you build these things, they can free up more of your time
Right.
and start looking at like, okay, what eats up the chunk of your time? And then what systems and things can you put in place to be able to free up that time so that you can do these other activities and at the same time, the musy activities of just building fun, creative things on social media, just
Right.
whenever I do that, just naturally speaking, people go, "Oh, that's really cool." And I go for it. And then generally speaking, they go, "Too complicated. You do it." And then
Right.
and it's kind of been the pattern of things. So I think if I can find ways to do it not for just for the grind of it, but just for the chuckle,
Yeah.
um, it can be really beneficial. So
Well, and things like, and I'll give you an idea right now because it's something I've been looking for forever. I've got
sure.
all this music saved to my hard drive and no
Hmm.
way to play it without like individually picking something, right? I just I want something. I want an application that I can load onto some thing that doesn't require me to carry my computer around, right? And have it just randomly play or create playlists or whatever, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that for some reason nobody has that because everything's like Spotify and whatever. I've got
Sure.
hundreds of files, right, that are sitting there that I want to listen to. And Spotify doesn't give me what I want when I want it. So,
Yeah.
I'm Gen X. I want it when I want it, right? So
Sure. Sure.
but
Sure.
that's an idea. But I
That's a fun
want to
one.
get to the piece is that you can, as you're building out this stuff for your business, you can film that, right? And you can talk about how you used it in your business, and that's another piece of content, right? So now you're building content and your business at the same time, right?
Mhm.
And just think about the things that you do with the people every time, and that's what you can systemize, right? So when I do my spiritual business consult, the first thing that I do is I send people out 4 different questionnaires, and in the act of filling out the questionnaires makes them think about their business in the way that I want them to be thinking about it by the time I get on the call with them, right? I want them to be thinking about how they're choosing to approach their business, what their business does in their life, how they're, what the vision is. And it also highlights anything that might be missing out of their business because a lot of people start their business and they don't think about a target market or they don't think about positioning or they don't think about whatever, right? And so it highlights all the pieces that are missing. And so if you think about that and the conversations that you have with all of your clients, there are things in that process that you can systemize and reduce your time load, right? And all you have to do is just create a way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And what's coming up for me? Well, there's a couple things coming up with it, and I'll just stream of consciousness because it's fun being on someone else's podcast, and I don't have to be on the rails, and I can go off the rails all I want.
Go
Yay!
off the
Okay.
rails. We'll be there. We're off the rails 90% of the
Yeah, I
time
love
here.
it. I love it. It's so great. It's like I love being with a podcast guys because you're like, we're going left.
Yes. I'm with you, babe.
But the thing is there's a couple things coming up for me on this one. So one, I think there is like a sabotagey behavior of just being comfortable doing the familiar and saying like at this level of business, it's very easy. And I don't work a ton. I don't or a
Yeah.
ton because I really, I actually I have a good chunk of time. I just think that there is this friction of like I hit this ceiling and I'm like, you know what? No, everything's comfortable at this level. Right.
Yeah.
And then I kind of dip down to that level because I was thinking about I'm like, well, I have an onboarding system and I've got the proposal systems and I've got lots of systems and stuff like that. But I just think there's like this, it might be about boundaries because I give them a lot of time to talk to them. Like I said, things where I meet with them like once a week and I have various, I have a bunch of different clients. And so that eats a lot of time. So maybe it's around boundaries about how I communicate with them. That's a that's the first thing that was coming up. Uh the second
I'll
thing I
give
just
you
want
a
to
good
mention it.
idea on that too.
Oh,
I have taken my clients to a check-in when you need to instead of a set check-in.
mm,
And so I've got, for the business consulting clients, I've got them on WhatsApp for the business stuff because they want to be able to put text in and stuff like that. But for my personal growth clients, they're on Marco Polo. And so we stopped doing the twice monthly calls, and now they just check in when they check in. They're like, okay, I'm doing my homework assignment for this, and here's my check in for that, and then they're in and out in 3-5 minutes, and they've moved on with their day, and they didn't have to give up an hour twice a month, and I didn't have to give up an hour twice a month, but I get to see them more often than I did before too, because they check in more often. And if I don't hear from somebody, I go, hey, where are you? Check in. And they go, sorry, right? So,
yeah.
but it's a 3-second thing, and it may be an equivalent amount of time for me, but
Mhm.
it's on my schedule,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so if I don't feel like being there that day at that time, I don't have to. And this is the other piece. And this, I had to do this when I was looking at getting more successful and bringing in more business and whatever. I had to have a negotiation with my inner child, because my inner child's like, sometimes you work too hard. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And
Mm.
she was just like, that's not okay. And having a full schedule is not going to be okay. And I'm like, okay. So I give you permission to cancel anything you want, anytime you want, no matter what. And that was all I needed.
Mm.
And like this week, I was supposed to do 7 podcasts or 8 podcasts, including yours, because I do 3 each session with my co hosts for the Spirit Guides Monday and Wednesday shows. And so 6 of those were with my co hosts, and I canceled those this week. I was just like, I'm
Ooh.
tired. I don't want to. I can't. And because I make sure I'm 90 days ahead, or at least
Yeah.
60 days ahead, right? I could do that. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. I can quit for 3 weeks and I will catch up in one recording session, right? And that's fine. So I'm pushed really hard to get to that point so that I could have this time now, because I knew I was going to be doing the production and I knew I was going to be tired, right? But now that we're that far ahead, I've got plenty of wiggle room to be like, I don't wanna, and I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The content
Yeah.
production, man. It's the name.
It's a lot.
Get ahead of the things. It feels great. I got the podcast scheduled out a couple of weeks. So like ours is gonna go live, I think, in 2 weeks. So but like well, here's what's coming up for me when you say that is I think I have a thing where like I may have a tendency to like want to give people that maybe it's a lack of boundaries or something around like in the morning time. I'm like, okay, these are the things I want to do. Like it could be marketing or play and or those types of activities. But then people like, oh, can we meet at 8 a.m.? Can we meet at 9? Can we meet at like 6? Yeah, and I've got like Indian dev teams that I work with as well. Like, can we meet at 8 a.m.? And it's like my morning creative blocks are taken up by people that go, well, can I jump in? And I go, ugh, right. And then and I have a hard time saying no because it's like, well, it's the time that works for them. I should just make it work. And so then I generally lose out on that fresh creativity. And then
Right.
I try to do the creativity at night when I'm all burnt.
Yeah.
And then
You won't have it.
it
It's not there.
don't work
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. So what you need to do is just set aside 2 days a week or 3 days a week where you do
Mm,
creative stuff in the mornings. And it's blocked out. You block it out like an appointment. So when somebody asks for the appointment time, you go, sorry, I'm booked at that time.
mm, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One one thing I was gonna say, in theory, by
There's
the way,
lots of things
I
you
just
can
want to
say
say
in
because
theory.
well, here's what's going on in my head, is that you could take just one more say because it's just top of my mind, and I gotta get it out. Is
Yep.
you could take if you had 100 of your songs and you had it on a Google Drive, you could upload it to the Chat GPT and just have it labeled like what do these things, what are the types of songs, what are they about? Give me some things about these things. You could then upload that to ChatGPT as an API system on the back end and vectorize it, which means it goes into a knowledge base, which is the long-term memory of ChatGPT. If you built out an automation where you could text or Slack message the AI and said, "Hey, I'm looking for some oldie songs around this, that, or whatever, or I like Shakira, whatnot." It would then go into the memory banks and then it would look at the list of records of what songs you have. And then you could take that list and then dump that into a queue and then have that get served up to you as like a text message back of here's your songs in order that you could just click play on via text message. So you're using a combination of ChatGPT to label it. You're using it as vectorized memory using the API assist. It's then going in, it's now you're asking those things. It's then giving you a list back of those songs in orders. And then it can grab a list of all those different links that you have in your Google Drive and then bring that back to you as a text message. So, anyways, I just want to say it. It was on the top of my mind.
Okay. I
So,
understand you had to get it out of your brain. I get it. You spoke a little Greek to me, but a
okay,
little Greek to
sorry.
me. But
In the
yeah,
back of my
that's
mind, I was like, how do I do that? And I was just like,
I know.
and like I had and it started like eating up more of my time in my
I
brain. And
know.
so I'm like, I just
My
gotta get
husband's
it.
ADHD. I
Yeah,
understand
I was like, if
exactly.
I don't
That's
get
why I
this
didn't
thing out,
stop
I'm
you.
gonna pop. I'm gonna pop. So, anyways, but those are the types of things like that to me is like it's not really a businessy use case, but it's a fun thing to think about. And it's like, can I solve that? You know, and
Right.
it's just it's a little challenge. Can I figure that out?
Businessy use case because, I'm a coach. I've got
Yeah,
countless content pieces, right?
sure.
That could be applicable for the content pieces too. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's an equivalent
Well,
thing, right?
yeah, you could do it
So
with the chat bot too. Yeah, yeah. If
sure.
you had if someone was asking chat bot, hey, I'm looking to figure out these things and maybe have a history of all your coaching events that you did, and it says, oh, well, I got a great one from this. Pull that up for you. So yeah, it could be applied in that way as well. I
Yeah,
wasn't thinking about that way, but yeah, yeah. So,
yeah.
but that is my typical like as you can like I live in two different worlds, right? Very fascinated with mindset and hero's journey, obviously, right?
Mhm.
But as you can tell, like the builder side of me has a tendency to like I do like, when I was younger, I was always like this random inventor. I had like a book, a whole bunch of notebooks of just like random half-ass invention ideas, and all these different things. And so like I like the tinker. Like my father comes from like a wood shop, used to sharpen saws. My grandfather was a machinist. So there's this desire in me to want to build things and create
Yeah.
things. It just sometimes I think the low vibration, it's easier to consume social media content, but it feels better to get into that like you want to call it hard fun or whatever it is, but that kind of like, can I solve this thing? So, anyways, just a little side
Yeah.
tangent.
So let me just feel into this. Anything else that you're thinking of that you want to cover or
I do have one thing,
yeah.
slightly off skew, but as it goes. So, my wife is pregnant.
Hmm.
She's about 5 months pregnant. I don't know the exact dates. The plan is to go to Joe Dispenza's 10-day retreat in December in the my Riviera and by Cancun in this like December 2nd, no, December 2nd. At that point, she will be 31, 32 weeks pregnant.
Hmm.
So she'll be in her third trimester.
Yeah.
And so originally she's like, I totally want to go. And she's like, but I don't want to hurt the baby. And she's like, but I'm trying to go to be the best mom possible. But what if something terrible happens? And so there's this thing of should we go or not go? Considering she'll be in her third trimester.
And you're on
Uh,
the West Coast, right?
I'm on the West Coast.
Yeah.
It's
So
in
it's a long
Cancun.
flight.
It's like probably 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So you're just asking me to look at the timelines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If she's three months pregnant, or not 3 months, but 31 weeks pregnant, is it a good idea to go to the Joe Dispenza thing, or is it gonna be detrimental to the baby if she ends up going?
I don't feel like it's detrimental to the baby. I feel like she's going to be exhausted. Um, what I see is that despite it being September, it's going to be really hot and she's going to be hot and uncomfortable and she's going to have a hard time finding a place to sit that's going to be comfortable for her and there's going to be a lot of people and she's going to get overwhelmed by that and have to go sit in the hotel room. And yeah, I feel like she's not going to get her full value out of the experience,
Mm.
and it's not about the baby being impacted, it's about her being impacted. And then it's going to make her tired. And depending on when the baby comes, you may not want her to be in that state when the baby arrives, right?
Mm.
So it's yeah. So let me just feel into that. Hold
Sure,
on.
sure.
Okay. Now the baby says that he's not going to be there very quickly after that, so it'll be okay. So she'll recover. So it's just a matter of whether she wants to be uncomfortable and hot and miss a lot of it, because that's kind of what I'm getting from the
Sure.
energy of that space for her. And you're gonna go and do all the events because she's gonna say, "Oh, you go do them because one of us should be there," and then she's gonna be alone by herself in the hotel room, feeling sad and sorry for herself, sort of thing. Feeling like, well, this isn't what I intended when I came, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm gonna go communicate it to her and let her know because she's thinking, what does she want to do? Because I asked her, I said, "It's your baby, Moon. What do you want to? You want to go to Japan? You want to go to Italy?" What? And she's like, "Joe Dispenza." And then she was just like, she's like, and there was only the only thing that was available was like Tennessee and other places. And then she's like, "No, I want to be in Cancun." And then Cancun 10-day retreat popped up, and I was like, "There you go." And it was just not the exact time that she wanted it. So we'll see
Well,
what happens. I'll let her
yeah.
know, and then we'll go from there.
This would be the moment that I mentioned that I'm doing a retreat in November in
Oh,
Panama.
where are you doing? And where at?
In
Panama?
Panama.
Oh,
Yep.
Panama. I'll let
In
her
Boca de
know.
Panama. So, let her know.
Send me some deets on it. Send me some
I
deets on it.
will. I
Okay.
will. So, yeah.
Um,
So anyway, you were gonna say.
yeah, I wonder to me, so that was, I mean, that was another thing that popped up. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything. I mean, that's the businessy kind of questions was really around that one productivity, and there is judgment around the I'm not working hard enough, and I'm gonna mess up and all that jazz. But I think
So
we've been. Oh, go ahead.
that would be my other piece, is to give yourself permission to fuck off, to fuck about, right? Because
And
that's
I go,
one of the
no.
I know, right? But this is the thing, is you've got to give yourself, you can say, so when I
Can I just say not social media though? Can I just
no,
say
no, no,
like,
no, I don't
okay,
mean that. I just
okay,
mean,
cool,
to not work for a while, right?
sure.
And my friend Catherine, who does the Wednesday shows with me on the here, when we actually got on, I had makeup on, she had her makeup on, we were ready to go, and I was like, she's like, "How are you?" I'm like, "I'm tired." And she was like, "Do you want to not do this?" And I was like, "Yes, I want to not do this." And she's like, "Okay, but I'll give you your 2 hours back, but you've got to tell me what you're going to do with it, because if you just go and do other work, you're not going to feel better." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a valid point." And so my husband and I made plans. We went into town. We had some nice lunch out and did a little bit of light shopping, not too heavy, just something fun that got me out of the house and moving around, and something that was just, I work in my same four walls. So, I need to get out of the house periodically or else I go nuts. And, I had a lovely afternoon as a result, which I probably would not have done had she not said that, right? I probably, I had other work I had to do, and I did get some work done before I left. But had she not been like, "Okay, make a plan," right? And this is the thing, is that you have to make a plan for what's going to happen. And that's true whether it's fear, right? I'm afraid this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And you go, "Okay, well, what happens if I'm overscheduled? How I'm going to fix it," right?
Mhm.
And you just make a plan for how you're going to fix it. And the answer is not to put your nose down and grind through, right? That can't be the answer, because that's the fear, is that you're going to do that, right? Or that you're going to quit and just go do something else because it's too overwhelming, right? Those two answers, those extremes, are not allowed, right? You have to pick something that is a more balanced answer, right? And so, the key is to find the balance point, right? You want to work hard and you want to play hard. And, we enjoy, as entrepreneurs, we really enjoy working hard. If we didn't enjoy it, it would not be worth it. We would be working for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Because the work that we put in is often uncompensated, right?
Totally, totally.
Because It's just the nature of the beast, but the freedom is
Yeah.
worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy the feeling also afterwards with these things. Like there's been, I was making this 30-day AI agent challenge, and like my wife saw me come in and going, this thing doesn't work, and I'm so mad right now. And then like, an hour later I come in, I'm like, it works. It works. And so I gotta remind myself it does. Again, I enjoy the challenge of it, but there is this like frustrationly going up against the thing and like button heads against technology.
Yeah.
But it's a thing I enjoy. It's just getting into the rhythm, the rhythm of the night. But
I love that
and
you've got a walking soundtrack in your head too.
yeah, dude, all the
My brain does the same thing.
oh,
I just don't let it out of my mouth very often.
yeah, it
You're
was,
around me at home though, it's all the time.
yeah, for sure. I got it in me so much, but like, there's like, yeah, I think for my big take is just have a list of these are the permitted activities for fun.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I love to do is like I have like a little bonfire in my backyard, is sit there with my wife, play some music, have a bonfire, eat some good food, chill out. Like when I go and do that, it's like ripping my wife and me out of like the online entertainment. You're like hers is like true crime drama,
Yeah.
like this, like who did it? Did they find it? And it's like, but getting it out of that and going into the backyard, it's a process. But once we do it, feel good. And so just
Yeah.
remembering that, okay, I've got these options. I need to go down one of these paths and then
And you may
plan
want
it.
to just set an alarm on your phone, right?
Mm.
So, you can set screen time limitations on your phone for like parental controls,
Oh
and you
yeah,
can
yeah,
just
yeah.
shut it off and it won't let you come back in again until you're off for however period of time, right? And you could do that. You could also set an alarm for 7 o'clock every night that says go outside.
Shut it
And
down.
as long as you follow it, you're
Yeah.
good. My husband's notorious for ignoring his notifications, so that doesn't work so well for him. But, you got to know what works for you. And if you
Hmm.
get in the habit, I mean, my husband and I, when we lived in Richmond, this is one of the things we miss the most is the bonfires, right? We had a massive tree come down from the neighbor's yard, and
Hmm.
like it was falling into our yard. It was coming up from the roots, and 60-foot tree, and we had to chop it down. And so we were working on it. My husband was working on it. I was breaking down branches, and we spent the better part of like 2 months with the bonfire in the backyard running 24/7, and it's just
Nice.
to get rid of all the brush, right? And so he'd have this massive log, and we would bank the coals at night, and then we would get up first thing in the morning and blow the coals back up and get the fire going again, and both of our offices looked out onto it, and so we could work and stare at the bonfire and go out and periodically and feed the branches and whatever. It was the best mental health thing ever during the pandemic. It was so good.
I love it. I
Yeah, and I
love, I
miss
love,
that because
I
we
love
don't.
fires. I love the
Yeah.
smell. I love it. My family, we did a thing called Derek Days when we were younger. They were friends with everybody on their street, and then everybody moved away from the street. And then what happened was every summer we would go camping and invite everybody that used to live on the street together. And my family would play music, and they'd sit by a bonfire, and they would hang out, and they would just sing oldie songs. And so I grew up like in the forest, in these bonfires, listening to music. And so for me, it brings me back a lot of those places. So if I get around those types of activities, it's very soothing to my soul and
Yeah.
rejuvenating. So
Yeah,
it's
me
a
too, and my husband too.
ah
He was a scout, and
oh, it's awesome.
my mother and I used to go camping because she had no money for vacations, so we would camp. And so
Right.
for both of us, the bonfire is way soothing to the soul, right? It's just like this thing. And so we miss it because we're here in Panama and it's a little too warm where we live to have bonfire and be comfortable. So our friend just moved another 1,500 feet up the mountain. And so
Mm.
we're thinking about going up that way because it's cool enough by her to have the bonfire. So
Is it an the mountain's not a volcano, right? Is it
it is a volcano.
or the
Yes.
volcano? It's
Well,
active?
hers is not a volcano. So there are two mountains I live on the side of Volcano Baru. And then she's in Jaramillo on a different mountain top. The mountains here go straight up. And there's like a whole bunch of them. I mean, I literally can go from I live at 3,500 feet. I can go from 3,500 feet to 5,500 feet in 15 minutes. Okay. It goes straight up. I'm not kidding. Right. And the valleys in between them are like 1,000-foot drops, off to the side. It's insane. It's like the tectonic plates came together and just shoved things up. It's like, I've been to the Rockies. It is more intense than the Rockies, right?
That's wild.
So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you don't get used to it. I mean, last night we were coming home and it was foggy because we live in the cloud forest, and it was foggy, and there were lights on the top of one of the mountains behind the house that was already, like, you looked up like this to see the house that was 30 feet off the road, right? Because you were already looking up, and then the mountains were above the house another 60 feet from my vantage point with houses on the top. And that mountaintop was not far away. It was like a quarter mile away. Right.
So it's
just like, ugh.
I feel like you
It's
could
just
choose
so big, right?
I feel like you
Yeah.
choose your climate depending on where you want to live. Right.
Absolutely.
Like
There are
Ohio is a colder area.
19 microclimates in this area. And so I can literally walk a block and a half up my street and it'll be a different climate. So it's bizarre. It's
That's
because it's
awesome.
just like this, and because the valleys and the winds and the clouds, and it all creates its own
Yeah.
little
So
microcosms.
you got a bonfire. It's just a big, gigantic volcanic
Right.
bonfire in the center. Try to roast
Luckily, it hasn't erupted, so
no. Long stick with
we get
the
earthquakes.
marshmallow on it. Yeah.
Yeah, we get earthquakes, but that's one of the things that my students are going to do. My participants who are coming to the retreat is they're all going to go up to Volcano Baru because it's at 11,000 feet, which is the same height as Machu Picchu, I think, or
Oh,
close to it,
really?
right? Yeah, and it's the only place on the planet you can see the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean at the same time on a clear day.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
That's
cool,
cool.
right?
That's
Yeah,
cool, man.
yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't think you ever get, I mean, people say they get used to like, fancy houses, but they say views is something that you never really,
yeah.
get like you don't adjust, you always appreciate it, and
Yeah,
it's
we have
something
been
that,
here 2 years now, and typically at a year you normalize, right, to whatever your new environment is. And we have normalized to our environment. Well, we wake up every day and go, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful," right? We're just like, it is so gorgeous, and everywhere we go is just, and the landscape is ever changing because of the clouds, right? So the clouds are at different stages, and sometimes you see the mountains, sometimes you don't see them, sometimes they're silhouetted, sometimes they're darker here and lighter there, and so it's always this ever-changing beautiful landscape, and I'm just always in awe of. And in November, when the season changes, because we're coming into summer, um we go from the rainy season to the windy season. And what happens is that the raindrops get smaller, and the wind hits them and stretches them out into these lines that they call bajareke here. And that creates the most stunning, vibrant rainbows you've ever seen in your life. I mean, just jaw-dropping rainbows. And that's why I decided to do the retreat at that time, because I'm just like, you guys have got to see these
you gotta see
rainbows,
it, you
right?
gotta see it, man.
Gotta see the rainbows, right? It's because it's just so stunning. And that's just it's every year. And so,
That's
we have the
awesome.
rainy season where everything's lush and green, and then we have the windy season where it's the weather, the temperatures are hotter and colder. So hotter in the day, colder at night, because the clouds aren't there to keep the temperature in, right? The heat in. And so, it's just awesome.
That's beautiful. Awesome. Awesome is a good word for it. The geek in me is like, I thought about this a lot, especially with views and vantage points. Like this, I think the sense of awe, awe I think it's a rendering issue. When I say rendering issue, I mean on your computer, when you're looking at your computer, you're rendering an image, which means
Right.
you're processing an image. And I have a feeling, this is just my own gut bro sciencey logic behind it. But when you look at something that's so beautiful, like these rainbows, right? Like the two oceans at the same time, you're rendering so much beauty that you're just like,
We're click reboot. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or you literally go the same way your computer freaks out and goes,
Yes.
It's just like you're like too much beauty to process, and it's like, and so I think it's so amazing to be able to do that because it does something to the spirit, the mind, the whatever of just kind of like wiping the slate clean and kind
Yeah.
of rebooting the consciousness in some way, shape, or form.
It's interesting that you say that because one of the things that I deal with in my work is people have identities that they hold and roles that they play in their lives and things like that, right? And so, when you come to a retreat or something like that, you're stepping out of your established roles, you're stepping out of your established identities and things like that. And that allows you to make shifts easier than if you were staying at home, right? Because you don't have the constructs around you sort of calcifying, right? And I kind of feel like because we have so many microclimates here, that we go through that all the time because you go to a different part of town and you're in a completely different weather pattern, right? You go to a different place and you in a completely different, visual climate. There's a visual experience, right? And I feel like that's actually valid. I never thought about it until you just said that right now, but um the I living here, there is an energy on the volcano that the locals call tranquilo, right? It is
Mhm.
literally difficult to be angry here because you're just like so chill,
I'll
right?
show you.
Yeah, it's like, come on down, baby. We'll see what happens, right? But I mean, you can get there, but it takes more.
Yeah.
It takes a
Yeah.
lot more to get there, right? Energy here is just so calm and so peaceful. And so you're just like, oh, yeah, I could just sit here. It's good. It's good.
Mm.
And we've got this beautiful, massive river that runs through the middle of town, which is, it's got all these rocks in it, so it's loud. So it's like, which is so comforting, right? And I have a friend who lives right on the river, and I did a TikTok about it, so you could probably see it.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, but it's so loud, like really, really loud. And it just, there's something about the energy of the river that just sort of breaks up any energy that's there, right? So
It,
yeah, it's
we're, we're,
interesting.
we're connected. We're connected in
Yeah.
some weird way to the environment that we're in. It's like it's funny because like I live in Long Beach and it's beautiful 4 blocks away, but I also live literally next to a bar. Like
Yeah.
I can touch a bar
I
like right next door. That my
hope you
neighbor
have
is the
some
bar.
warding up on your house.
I've saged it a couple months ago, and
That's not
so
warding.
oh no, I don't know.
Not protections.
I'd
Saging is
love.
clearing. It's not protecting.
Okay, yeah. We had some we had some weird stuff happen, so I saged it and it got rid of it.
Yeah.
And so it was some funkiness. But no, I don't know. I'd love to learn a little bit about the warding thing. I want to mention the thing I was gonna talk about is that I somebody on my podcast had told me to me, it really stuck with me. It's like we live in 3 realities, right? We live
Mhm.
in our internal narratives, mindsets, constructs, and it could be spiritual realms, right? We live
Yep.
in the environment, like what you're talking about, right? Which was the, tranquilo or next to a bar, right? Depending where you're at.
Yep.
And then we live in this social reality, something that me and you are currently co-creating this reality right now. There is an
Right.
energy, there's a communication, there's a vibe, there's all this fun stuff going on.
Right.
And so really, if you're trying to get leverage on another reality, you can leverage 2 realities against the one. So if you're trying to change someone's internal narrative, you change the people, you change the environment. If you're trying to change the environment, you can change the internal narrative and the social environment, right? So depending on what you're trying to how you're trying to do it, you can shift one reality by leveraging the other two. I think it's part of what you do with retreats, right?
Yeah.
And so but anyway, so that was top of mind, but I'd love to learn a little bit about warding.
Yeah. So warding is about setting energetic barriers on your home that tune things in and out, right? So it's literally the act of, claiming the space of your property. And, I do that on businesses as well. I used to have a retail store back in 1999, and I created we created a protection, a ward on the space. And it was very interesting because the protection had just gone in, and nothing was in the store yet. we were still renovating, and I just done the protection, and this random woman walks in off the street and asks, what are you doing here? And I told her what we were doing, a spiritual education and healing center. And she's like, I'll never come in here. I'll never come in here. And she went around the entire store, walked through the whole store saying, I'll never come in here. I'll never come in here, over and over and over again for like 3 minutes straight, right? Like, just, and I was like, that is weird enough shit that I am not interfering with that, right? I'm going to allow that to be true, right? She is programming herself to never walk in the door. Well, like 4 months later, she walks by as my insurance agent, who knows everybody in town, happens to be in the space, and he used to come over for hugs. And so he had come in for a hug, and she walked by on the street. I'm like, what's her deal? He's like, oh, don't let her in your store. She's the local kleptomaniac. She'll steal everything. And I'm like, well, she'll never come in here.
That is rad. That is rad.
and we did inventory 18 months after we
Uh-huh.
opened, and it was a retail store. We had a lot of high school kids who came in, a lot of that stuff. And we had a lot of small crystals and stuff that people could just pick up and walk out with. So you would expect there to be a fair amount of loss, right? And we did inventory after 18 months, and we had $12 worth of loss. And we were fairly certain that we had given it away, because we would occasionally
Wow.
give away a rock here or there to somebody who really needed it or whatever. And, if you forget to write it down, right? $12 in loss over 18 months. What store can say that?
Not,
Right?
I
Nobody.
don't know.
Right? So, but that's what warding will do for you. I mean, my husband and I were in the pandemic, and I told you a tree was coming down, right?
Mhm.
So I had a dream the night that the tree started to uproot. And the dream was the trees were falling in the road in front of me while I was trying to ride my bike down a main road in Boston, which we were in Richmond at the time. But that was my dream. And it was like, trees are falling, right? And I got up in the morning, and the tree was 3/4 of the way down into the yard, almost about to hit the fence. And the ward had told me, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
So,
then, we had a protection on the same property that
mhm.
there was a guy who was walking by. He was like not right. And, he was trying to come onto the property. My husband was down the side driveway, and he started to talk to him and went to walk across the property line and literally rocked back on his feet. Right. And he's like, oh, and he's trying to get my husband to shake his hand, and it's a pandemic. And he's like, I don't want to shake your hand. It's a pandemic. But he was trying to get an invitation to cross the property line,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
just couldn't get one. It's like a vampire, right? Can't
yeah,
cross
yeah,
the door,
yeah.
right? And it's the same idea, but the ward was in place and really solid, right? And so,
Crazy.
all of this, I have a student of mine who's in Louisiana, and she had a hurricane come through, Hurricane Ida. And the hurricane came through, and she's like, what do I do? And I said, well, you make your wards flexible so that they do this, and they'll slow down the wind, right? So they'll flap and slow down the wind. And you ask the hurricane to miss you. And she's like, what? I said, yeah, just go ask the hurricane to miss you. And you can see, if you go look at the vector of Hurricane Ida,
Uh-huh.
the hurricane at the last second turned and moved 20 miles away from where it was supposed to hit, because the eye was supposed to come right over her house. And at the
Oh,
last
wow.
second, it moved 20 miles away. And so that the eye did not go over her house anymore. And none of the models could account for why it moved. And I'm like, I can account for why she asked it to move. Right. You know? Yeah.
Well, there is there's a connection that it's so hard to materialize and prove it, but there are, like, I mean, there's the science. When we talked about before, I know on my podcast a little bit about like the connection between the mysticism and science, right? And there's,
Mhm.
like, quantum entanglement and all these other types of things that we're slowly starting to see these connections. And it's really interesting because, like, until you experience it, like, for me, it's like all I had was staging, right? Like, so, I had some. And so I know that, like, when I do this, this happens, and I can't
Right.
I can't really, it's like a black box. I reach in, and something happened, and it was really interesting, because a bunch of weird, we started to get, like, I guess, like ghostly stuff
Mhm.
was happening at the house. Like, I
Oh,
had
yeah.
like I was in the kitchen, everything was shut, and I had a cold wind blowing my neck, and I was just like,
Mhm.
no windows here, and I kept doing it, and then, like, the next day my wife saw a shadow. And then the next day, the drawers in my bedroom, they were pulled out. And then the next
Well, you've had a
day,
poltergeist.
and then the next day we smelled something died. And
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
And
that was a
so,
poltergeist. This is why I said if you're next to a bar, you need to have some serious wards on your house because a bar will draw in all kinds of crap because people are altered, people will have, they're depressed, they've got bad energy, there's all kinds of stuff that happens in bars. And so they're easy to feed on. And so all the
mm,
negative energy entities come into bars.
it's like a buffet for
It is
ad
a
spirits.
buffet, yes.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so I went through and I played a bunch of high vibration music and did a bunch of that stuff, and I haven't been anything since, but I was just like, this is really weird. And it was like day after day after day, like 5 days in a row. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go do something. So like we took off cross country, left for a little while. Like,
That's probably what did it more than the sage because sage is
yeah.
naturally clearing, but poltergeists are particularly pernicious. So,
Mm,
they don't like to give way. But if you were not vibing with them and you left, they probably wandered back over to the bar.
oh, okay. That's probably
Yeah.
it. Yeah, because we're like, yeah, I think we're just gonna go cross country for a little bit, and
That
then we'll
seems
come
wise.
back and we're like,
But
no
I would
thanks.
definitely put a word up because it could come back. So
Okay, okay, yeah. I'm
yeah,
gonna go. I'm gonna go get a
yeah.
ward of some kind. Where do I go to get
You
wards?
don't go to get one, you have to build it.
I have to build a ward.
An
Okay.
energetic building. It's an
Oh,
energetic weaving. So there are different ways to do it. The
okay.
easiest one is when nobody else is home is to just like shove your aura out with anger and upset and just be like, mine. Nothing else comes in. Mine.
Uh,
But you don't want to do that when anybody else or your animals are home because that can be disruptive to them. But that's
mm,
the simplest and easiest one. But you got to make sure that
okay.
you are doing it all the way from roof to floor, roof to basement, right?
Okay.
Um, don't just take the walls because then you leave your floor and ceiling open, right? You got to make sure you take the entire property that way.
Got it. So it's a
Um,
it's a claiming of dominance
yeah,
in the radius around the property and
yeah,
a declaration of that.
yeah,
Okay, I've seen that. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the short, sweet, and simple one. There
Okay.
are much more complex ones that
I bet there
that
are.
really would count for a lot of other things, but I can't teach that on this podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. No, no,
but that's a short and sweet one for if you've got it and you just shove it out from your body to your aura, but then you have to disconnect from it. Don't stay connected to it because otherwise you're going to have the spiritual bends. Okay? So, you shove it out, you leave the aura and or the ward in place and you pull your aura back so that you're not like still connected to it because
mm,
bad, right?
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But if you
Yeah.
do that, you'll shove out anything that happens to be there. Now, if you have a portal in your house or something like that, then that's not going to fix that. But
Mm,
negative ley line, not going to fix that, that sort of stuff.
got
So,
it. How would you know if there's a portal in your house? How would you know that?
so I actually had a conversation with somebody recently about that. And she actually had a portal in her house. And I'm like, okay, so you will get you may have your wards up and you get random entities in your house anyway, right? It's like, how is it my wards are failing? Your wards are not failing. You check the ward, it's fine. And it's like, why? That would be an indicator, right? I've had somebody who felt uncomfortable in her bedroom, but fine in the rest of her house. That was because there was a portal in her closet. So I found that in somebody's house. This particular one, she has fae that sort of wander through her house on a regular basis, fairies. And I'm like, okay, that's really not your optimal choice, right?
Mm,
You don't want to have open season on whatever happens to want to walk through your house, just like you don't want to do that for humans. You don't want to do that for entities or fae or anything else, right? It's just not wise, right?
interesting.
So yeah,
What a, okay, so that's interesting. I have a thing, and I'm curious of what it means, or at least signal wise. Is like I think it might have been since my incident that I had when we talked about it offline about my experience. I had a little bit of a spiritual
yep,
battle, but now occasionally, like whenever if I'm like if something's happening, right? If there's like I would say that maybe I'm watching like a something like sometimes I watch ghost shows, or
hmm
something like that. But I will get like a chill that runs up my back. and it
Mm,
like it starts here and it kind of like runs up the back, especially if it's something really, and occasionally happens in places and things and situations, and like, well, I'll get this like chill, I guess a chill or something like that that goes up the back of my spine, and I don't know
mm.
what that is. If you know anything about what that
Yeah,
might mean.
you're tapping into something that is not good. So that's what
Mm.
that is. I would not recommend you're an empath. So when you're watching these shows, you're actually sharing energy with the people in the show. And
Oh,
you
interesting.
should not do that because they're going into places that are probably stupid for them to go to begin with. So, you
Yes,
know,
yeah, yes, they are.
and so you're riding their energy to go to those places with them, which is probably not wise, right?
Yeah, I think it was one
Yeah.
of those things. I think after like I had a crazy spiritual encounter when I was in the jungles, I kind of got fascinated with that stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this about?
Yeah.
But I could see how that may not serve me. Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. I can watch those shows and I can ride their energy, but I know how to manage my energy so that I am just, I'm just tasting their energy rather than putting my energy with them in the space. There's a
Mm,
difference, and that's about developing the skill to do that, right? So, you can do these things and watch these things, but you need to develop the skills to be able to do it in a way that is healthy and safe for you. And you need to have protections up on yourself and your home so that things, if you do it badly, things don't come to visit, right? Yeah.
got it. And then in terms of being like an empath, right? Is it because I do feel like overly connected to some emotions and things. It's hard for me. Like watching somebody bomb on stage is very hard
Mhm.
for me to watch, or
Yeah.
like situations like that. Is that what makes me an empath? Or
What makes you an empath is the way that you hold your energy field. And so when you hold your energy, for most empaths, and you said your brothers tortured you, so this would be a good reason why you would have developed this experience. But what happens is when we have problems as children and we feel unsafe, we end up shoving our energy fields out to the edges of the room or the building, or some people the earth. If you meet somebody who's like overly overdone by, some sort of genocide happening on the other side of the planet, they're holding their energy field at the edge of the earth. Okay. They're also not going to be effective in their life in any way, shape, or form because their energy is too diffuse to actually be effective, right? So when you shove your energy field out, for most people, it's the edges of the room or the building, right? When you do that, everybody is inside your energy field. And so any shields you try and put up are not going to work because they're already inside your field and the shields are on the outside of your energy field, right? Outside of your aura. And you are subject to whatever emotions are going on for them, which, you're used to floating in the energy of everybody's emotions. And as long as there's not a strong emotion in the room, it's not a big deal. But the minute there's a strong emotion, it's like in your face and overwhelming, and it's hard for you to get rid of. And you feel like you have to solve it for the person because you can't stop it. Right.
hmm,
And so that's about learning how to change the way you hold your energy field.
got it, got it.
And
Okay,
I've got a free class on my website on that. So just go to kellysparta.com, click on blog, and it's boundaries for empaths is the button. And that's a free class that I offer for everybody
got it. Yeah, it's interesting.
because I think everybody should do it.
Well, yeah, and I think I part of. I mean, I don't know if it's because like I'm an entrepreneur or whatever, but like, I mean, I like being of service and I like feeling the emotions that I get from, helping people and doing that type of stuff. But I do think there is a thing that can pop up that I could see. I never really thought of myself as an empath. We'll put it that way.
Mm,
I never thought about that. I thought about like, try to pay attention to people's feelings and that kind of jazz and see what's going on there. But I wonder, yeah, I'm curious about how me as an empath, if that's the vibe that you're getting from me, how that's affected me as an entrepreneur, either for good or for ill. And knowing that, because again, knowing something about myself allows me to be able to kind of leverage that into a way that could be,
yeah.
beneficial versus doing things unconsciously,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
And there being an empath it's a gift and a curse,
mm,
right? So it's a curse until you learn how to manage it, in which case it's a massive gift, right?
yeah.
When you learn how to manage it, it's like, oh, look at this. I can touch into people's energy field and know how they're feeling. I can, I can have a sense of the room and know if there's safety there or not. I can, it actually amplifies into other psychic abilities. So, for instance, when I do the energy reviews, I'm using my empath skills to do that. I'm actually literally sending a piece of my energy into your field, and I'm mapping you onto my body so I can feel what you feel and all of that, and all of that. So there's a whole there's a whole layer of psychic abilities that are available because you have empath abilities, right?
Yeah.
So it helps you to better do to be psychic, to be able to read somebody's mind, right? ESP, right? There's lots of ways. I mean, there are other ways to do mind reading as well, but that don't involve empath abilities. But this particular empath ability does help with other things, right?
Mm.
So yeah.
It's super fascinating. Yeah. I think of it like the term I would use is like, crutches become capes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that hinders you is the thing that gives you your superpower, right? And so you got
Yeah.
to figure out just
Yeah. I mean,
how to use it.
yeah, psychometry is like that. It's where you're like holding on to an item and reading it. It's like you've spent your entire life as an empath reading other people's energy fields. So, that's not that hard. And then,
Yeah.
you can find people on land, like, or in a building or whatever. I was at an event and there were 600 people and the land was like 5 acres, and somebody was like, I need to find my boyfriend, and it was pouring rain, and I'm like, he's at the boathouse, and she's like, why would he be there? Did he tell you he's gonna? I'm not interfering, So, and sure enough, that's where he was, right?
It was at the
And
boathouse.
so, but that's an empath ability, right?
Yeah.
So
It's super interesting, leveraging it. And I've also noticed that there's a tendency to you call it channeling in terms of just communication. And
mhm,
like, whether it's on the podcast or whatever, there's a thing where you're in the flow of things and you're not you don't even think about what you need to say and how you need to say it, and it just kind of comes out effortlessly and all that stuff. And then because of that, I know with the podcast, a couple hundred episodes under my belt, that it's not, there's absolute confidence that it's all going to work out. Nothing's going to be wrong. We're going to figure
right.
it out. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious in terms of channeling. I know I can do it in that category, but like, what are the elements that make up an environment to be able to channel better?
So channeling is about connecting through your crown chakra, right?
Hmm.
So channeling is effectively possession with permission. So let's start with that. Yeah, let's start with that.
It's
Okay.
less attractive when you say it that way.
I know. I'm just saying it's possession with permission. And there are two types of channels. One is a semi-conscious channel and the other is a unconscious channel, right? And so unconscious channels are people like Esther Hicks. She goes out, Abraham comes in, and Abraham talks
Yeah.
and she's gone somewhere else. She doesn't know what's going on, right? And then when she comes back in, time has
Like
passed and whatever,
Bashar,
right?
right?
Like who?
Bashar? I think his name is Bashar. Am
Oh,
I?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But semi-conscious channel is I'm really a fully conscious channel at this point, but and I've always been a fully conscious channel. So there is another one. But semi-conscious channel, you're off to the side and you can see and hear what's going on, but you're letting somebody else talk through you. And if you need to, you can like jump in and change something because you hear the thought before it comes out of your mouth, right? And so that's a semi-conscious channel. For me, I'm at the point right now where I've been doing this for so long with my guides that it's so funny. A friend of mine's like, you're channeling half of your podcasts. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, but you don't sound different. You don't look different. But she's like, I know. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I talk about stuff sometimes that I don't know consciously a lot about it, but it just comes through, right? The
Download.
content just comes through. And because I've been in partnership for so long, when I first started channeling, my voice would sound strange, and the language would sound strange, and the syntax would not be mine, and I would get this strange look in my eyes and this whole thing. And that is more of channel, and now I do more of a, I don't know. It's more of a, I don't know, we're integrated, right? So my guides and I are integrated. And so when I'm talking, I may be channeling. And
Mm.
there's a good chance at any point in time in my life I may be channeling my guides, right? Because it's just whatever needs to come out comes out, right? And so
I thought of it more of,
sometimes they poke me on the shoulder and get my attention and say,
mm,
"Hey, we're telling you this." And
yeah.
sometimes it's just, they're just talking through me at the same time as I'm talking to somebody. So,
I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was more of like a stream of consciousness, and the words that are coming into your mouth are so effortlessly and just unthought about that it's not even like you are actively aware of what you're going to say. It just kind of flows outside of you. And that I thought was channeling, but that
no,
seems not quite
that's eloquence and fluid thought.
eloquence and fluid thought. So channeling is literally is
So,
really you're getting possession with permission flowing through you.
yeah,
And the information that's coming out of your mouth are things that you have no idea what or where it is.
yeah,
It's just something that is speaking through you.
yeah. It's not you talking.
Mm,
So the eloquence and fluid thought comes from your higher self.
okay.
And channeling comes from your guides or another entity or whatever. Yeah.
Got it.
Sometimes a ghost, you know.
Oh, okay, okay. And so then looking at like I guess channeling my higher self, right? Versus these other ones, right? Is there ways to tap into whether it's like connecting with my higher self more directly versus possession with permission, which sounds it's I mean it's
Terrifying?
I
It should. Yes.
yeah, no, thank you. Like
No.
I've fought in that things before. I don't need none of that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. My friend
So
Kathy will not channel at all, ever.
yeah,
She's
yeah,
like, I'm
yeah.
happy to be a translator. I do not channel. I am embodiment girl, so I'm like, yeah, I channel all the time. But it's not something I always see people go, oh, I want to take a chance at class in channeling. And please don't. Please don't. The first thing you need to learn, if you're taking a class in channeling, the first thing you need to learn is how not to channel.
Hmm.
Because the minute you open up the channel, things are going to come knocking.
Yeah, yeah,
And
for sure.
if you don't have good shields and you don't have good protections, then you need to know how to tell it to fuck off, right? Because once it gets in, it's hard to get it out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So to open to your higher self, let me feel into that because nobody's asked me that question before. 25 years I've been doing this work. Nobody's asked me that question. Isn't that funny? So to better channel your higher self, yeah, it's what they're telling me is that it's as I feel into the energy of it, it is about being willing to own your own power. So a lot of people have limitations about being able to own their own power. They have resistances to it, either because they were killed in a past life for their power, or because they have a well of rage and they with more power because they already take responsibility for everybody else and everything else. And so there's a lot of resistances to owning your power. So if you want to really do that well, you need to be prepared to own your own power, right? And
Mm,
so that's one piece. And then yeah, so the other piece is to our higher self. If you're not doing your inner work, you're going to have a hard time accessing your higher self because it is the part of you that has already done all the work. And so if your vibration is out of alignment with your higher self, being able to channel your higher self is going to be very difficult, right? So you need to keep doing your work so that you can bring yourself into a closer vibration to your higher self. You can talk to your higher self, but before you've done your work, yourself requires bringing that energy into your field. And if your energy is dissonant with that energy because you haven't done your inner work, you're going to find it very difficult to do that.
got it. I've
Right.
noticed that when you say it that way, is that like, for example, like when I'm on, I call it on point, right? You talk, maybe it's being serious or whatever the thing might be. But when I am meditating morning and night, when I am journaling, when I am doing these activities, when I am like abstaining from the social media stuff, there's a thing that I've noticed, at least with my ability to be able to get deeper into, I don't want to say it's higher self, but like to a degree, like I can meditate more clearly. I can do things more consistently. There's like more of an alignment of a vibration with that. I just noticed that there's a thing where I bounce out of it. I bounce out of those activities and start going to like lower behaviors, right? Social media, for example.
Yeah.
Take a drink every time you hear me say the word social media, everybody.
Talking of low vibration activities.
Kombucha, come on. What are you talking about here? What are you talking?
Oh my God, that's hysterical. Yeah.
But just I've just yeah. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but oh, I think I lost connection.
Yeah, we lost connection for a minute. My internet is starting to go a little spotty, so we should probably wrap up here soon.
Sure, for sure. Awesome. Yeah.
So that's one of the joys of living in Panama. So
yeah, internet's always almost awesome. You know,
yes.
it's always there. So
yes.
But it's been great coming on your show. I really enjoyed myself. This was insightful, interesting, a little terrifying here and there, but overall, great experience.
You know, that seems to be how people describe me.
Overall good times. Overall
good time, occasionally terrifying. Yeah. Yeah.
That's rad.
So yeah, well, thanks for coming on the show. This is, I love having something that's new and different. And so this was a nice change of pace for my listeners to have a different approach to things. And
Sure.
And guys, if you're listening and you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. Obviously, that's one of the best ways you can help me out in getting the word out. And obviously, go check out Dylan's podcast, The Heroes of Reality. And we'll put that in the show notes as well with a link. And if you have any questions, send them in, because I get questions all the time and I love to answer them. So you can send them to Kelle at kellesparta.com, spelled Kelle. Yeah, no extra letters, just an E. I know it's phonetically stupid. My mother, I can't help it. Anyway, so that's it for this week. Don't forget that what you focus on is what expands. What you intend is what you create. So choose wisely.
So that's it for today's episode of Spirit Guides Podcast. Head on over to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. Every week, one lucky listener who subscribes and posts a review on iTunes will be entered into a drawing for a $10,000 value grand prize and a private reading with Kelle Sparta herself. Be sure to head on over to spiritguidespodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Kelle's gift and join us on the next episode.